welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Tina Jha. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Startup India International Summit Prarambh on Saturday. The two-day global summit that began on Friday marks 5 years of the Startup India initiative that was first announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his Independence Day address in the year 2015 and then launched on the 16th of January 2016. Under the initiative, the government has taken several steps to promote young entrepreneurs in the country. Currently, with over 42,000 recognized startups, India has transformed into the third largest startup ecosystem, supplementing employability as well as enhancing our self-reliance. Besides, Startup India has also played a pivotal role in strengthening the key pillars identified for our startup economy. So on this edition of The Big Picture, we will talk about the progress that our startup ecosystem has made, particularly in the last 5 years, and how it can be strengthened further in the years to come. For this, I am joined on the program today by Dr. Subhash Chandra Pandey, former Special Secretary and Financial Advisor, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, Anurag Soni, CEO, Adverto.in, and Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director, Business Standard. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on The Big Picture today. You know, we often hear the Prime Minister talk about enhancing efforts to promote young talent in the country, nurture young innovators, and also during the pandemic year, he kept talking about converting crisis into an opportunity. So on the program today, we are joined by one such talented entrepreneur who, during the period of the lockdown, came up with a technology, a face mask detection system to say. So let's hear it first from him about how he came up with the idea and his experience in the last few months. Anurag, let's begin the program with you today.
Just after the lockdown, and since every industry got disrupted due to this COVID outbreak, so did the startups. So every industry was suffering immensely. So we could not sit just back and just look and wait for the problem to resolve by itself. So what we did by using our expertise, since we already had a previous exposure with artificial intelligence and machine learning things. So what we did, we developed a face mask recognition system. So with that, we came up with the idea, like why not build a kiosk out of it, since we were already in the industry of digital out-of-home advertising. So we thought, like, let's use our kiosk and have them detect face mask with the help of camera. So we developed our own algorithm. And again, there was a wave of making everything contactless. Then the wave of hand sanitization came, and everyone wanted to sanitize their hand, and that too contactless. So we embedded that contactless hand sanitization system in our kiosk as well. And then also at the same time, in around March, everybody was concerned for the people who are entering their premises, like whether are they having fever or not. Since it was new for everyone, nobody knew like what should be the proper compliances to have any stranger, any visitor into their organization. So we combined all such functionalities in a single kiosk. So we made it a 3-in-1 kiosk, and also that kiosk was also able to display the adverts related to COVID crisis as well. So for that, and apart from that, we have our sensors as well, and we had the dependencies of temperature sensors which were imported from China. So those sensors were also like contactless. So we didn't wanted that. So we contacted some of the manufacturers at the same time. Most of the manufacturers started focusing, they started boycotting China products, and they also started building this. So since in its nascent stage, we did face some trouble, but we completed our whole hygiene enforcement kiosk, and with all the 3-in-1 compliances intact. We also implemented a door access control system with that. So organizations started
using quite a couple of things that you worked on in the past few years, yes. I believe. What has your experience been of the program, if we talk about the Startup India campaign, the government's flagship initiative? Several efforts have been made in the past 5 years. As a representative of the startup industry, tell us about how your experience has been and what are the areas where improvements need to be made.
Yes, experience has been great just after this Startup India program, because we couldn't have imagined like the co-working space provided by the government. I am a beneficiary of a Startup India since I have been incubated in Jabalpur Incubation Center. So it is a like even in Jabalpur nobody could have imagined like there would be incubation centers, and that too of a corporate level system. So yes, it was really a great. What does a startup wants in its nascent stage? Everyone wants a office space. So yes, we got office space, internet connection, and many such things. And this was the positive side. And also there were lot many campaigns going around. Lot many hackathons were there. So we won many prizes in various hackathons. So this was all due to this Startup India initiative. But yes,
Okay.
we did face some of the tough times. Yeah, if
Okay,
I could
we'll
say, yeah.
come back and understand the challenges as
Fine.
well, and also understand what could be the possible solutions to them. But taking the discussion
Sure.
forward and on the 5-year journey of the Startup India initiative, Dr. Pandey, let me come to you. So if we talk about the pace of growth in the startup ecosystem in India, it has been significant. It has increased to 15% year on year in 2018. The growth of the number of incubators and accelerators in the country has also grown to 11%. So according to you, what have been the key pillars of support for the startup industry, especially since the Startup India initiative began?
In 2011, we had just one unicorn. What we call unicorn, having a valuation of more than $1 billion. And by 2016, we had 8 unicorns when this Startup India was launched in the year. And I was very actively involved since its beginning till very actively in 19, and continues also till subsequently with Invest India, which is hand holding the startup system. Now, from 2016, 8 unicorns. The latest NASSCOM report shows, just for tech startups, we have now 38. So from 2011 to 2016, we grew from 1 to 8, and from in last 3 years we have from 8 to 38. In last 3 years we have added 30, and as the NASSCOM report suggests, they are tracking the investments that are going into various startups, and the startups which have received more than half of 1 billion or so injection of capital. So the expectation is that in the current year we might cross 50 unicorns. So that is an amazing speed to grow, and another very defining feature of this thing has been that these startups are not concentrated in 1 or 2 sectors. They are growing across different sectors, and they, particularly given the boost to digital economy during the pandemic,
Yes.
we have seen enormous growth in educational technology, health technology, even agriculture, supply chain management, logistics, training and learning skill development. So a very diverse range of it, cyber security, IoT. And another thing, important thing to note is that these are not simply starting new business in unserved areas. Many of these startups, almost 1/4 of them, are employing very high degree of technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, and blockchain. So these are very positive signs, and I think the future holds very bright. The government has done its part of supporting, having a supporting policy framework. We have ironed out many irritants that the startup ecosystem had. Firstly, there was this big issue of angel tax, the investors, which was a provision enacted for a different purpose for money laundering thing. But when it came to hit the startup ecosystem in July 2019, the government took a bold step to address those concerns, and since then investment has got a big boost to them. So income, the turnover has been increased to 100 crore, and then host of other supportive measures in terms of in preference and in government government procurement systems, EMD exemption, etc., etc. So from both public procurement side and private procurement side, we see the startups are growing, and that is reflected in the growing number of unicorns.
Okay. Mr. Bhattacharya, so let's now talk about the Startup India International Summit, which is the first of its kind, the largest confluence of startups ever since the Startup India initiative was launched. Now, this, the government says, is a demonstration of course, India's neighborhood first policy. It will bolster partnership among the member countries. But how significant and beneficial will such a collaboration with BIMSTEC countries in the startup sector be for India and for the entire region?
Well, I think, you have to see that today India is some sort of a leader in the startup space. It is the world's third largest country to have in the field of startups.
Yes.
It is ahead of Germany, it's ahead of UK. It's a achievement of sorts to have reached this place in short time, as Mr. Pandey pointed out. So in a global scenario, you have reached a point where you are being seen as a major power in the startup space. Now, the interesting thing that needs to be noted here is this, that, we have legitimately complained and, cribbed about the impact of COVID-19, which has devastated a large number of people and everything. The economy has also been taken a hit. But if you look at the startup space, the COVID year has given it such a big lift, which is just amazing, in a sense, to have seen almost a jump of around 1,800 new startups in the COVID year is, to my mind, tells you a lot about the enterprise and the manner in which an adversity can be converted into an opportunity. Now, it is in the same COVID year that you saw the largest increase in the number of unicorns, that is, companies, startups with a valuation of more than 1 billion going up for 26 companies, startups with a unicorn status to 37 in 2021. So in other words, you have added 11 unicorns in a year where the other industries were actually being devastated by the impact of the disease as well as the lockdown. So I think there is something we need to recognize about the enterprise spirit and the use of technology that gave these startups a kind of a head start over everybody else. Today, almost, if you look at the total valuation of these startups in India, it is over $129 billion. Now, $129 billion is not a small amount. So, and if you take the top startup in the country, which is Flipkart, its valuation is around $25 billion. So, so it's a widespread revolution of sorts. And I think the startup is going to create a new multinational corporation, as indeed they have created new multinationals. And the sectors in which they're operating, almost 25% are in the e-commerce, another 10% is in the edutech, and another 7 or 8% in the fintech. So it is into those areas which requires technology, which requires qualified personnel. So the important challenge going forward would be how we make sure that our digital backbone, the infrastructure, is also beefed up and strengthened, and how we can strengthen our higher education as well as education infrastructure by which we can keep providing the kind of personnel that the startup ecosystem will require going forward. So it's it started very well. It has got the huge valuation. It has made the impact in a wide range of economy. So it requires the kind of support, because it's still at its infancy stage. remember that even though their valuations are very high, and not many of them are making profits. But also globally, you will see that global startups don't make profit easily. Amazon took almost about 2 decades to make its first profit. But when it starts making profit, those valuations get converted very easily into the bottom line. So therefore, we need to sustain them to make sure that the wonderful valuation that these unicorns have so far got should get converted into bottom line, so that the wealth effect becomes real instead of just remaining a sparkle in the eyes of the venture capitalist.
Absolutely. Anurag, so, what Mr. Bhattacharya says, the initiative started off well, has made a good impact on the economy, but this needs to be sustained. So if we look at the problems, talking from your experience, what have been the challenges, the teething problems that the new startups or the young entrepreneurs still face or struggle with?
Okay, so the major problem which most of the entrepreneurs, and that too from a tier 2 and tier 3 town faces. Because in tier 1, yes, there's a lots of exposure. But since we started out from tier 2 and tier 3, so we had our own share of experiences. So the moment we built our hygiene enforcement kiosk, so we are like now tired of getting applause from the government, from the local people. What we want from the government is the work order. So this is the gist of it. Like if I could summarize it in a single line, yes, most of the government people supports us. Yes, they do applaud, but we don't get work order, or else it takes a time. Like it takes 3 months, 4 months. Even though we are registered in many government portals as well, but yes, there must be a separate committee for this, a separate Startup India, I would say a forum must be there where you should like report your, and that too state wise, where you should report your innovation, and then they can help you in scaling to the government. We want to make government as a client.
Okay.
Yes, so we were not able to get them. Yeah.
Okay, let me take those points to Mr. Pandey. Your response to what Anurag points out, there are certain problems that the new entrepreneurs face, and the other larger challenges in terms of investment, mobilizing global capital, also ease of doing business. On that aspect, what else needs to be done?
You see, as the latest NASSCOM report for 2020 brings out, they last year saw more than 600 deals, investment worth $3.5 billion. That is more about 25,000 crore plus investment. So in terms of a investment, and this is a massive scaling up, just reflecting the broader trend of investor interest is steadily rising, especially as I said after the angel tax issue was resolved. But still, there are it can be improvised further because our regulations are still neutral to the size of the company, and there is a scope in company law to provide for a special class of treatment for investors in startups. And there are certain models available which have been suggested, and I hope it will be addressed to create a special investment channel for into a startup. As far as getting business and turnover is concerned, the government has, of course, not laid down any preference in terms of a procurement or a procurement quota. That is something, a move on the anvil. But what has been done is removing the disabilities vis-a-vis established suppliers. So the ministries are being encouraged to even place orders on experimental basis on products and technologies that have not yet been widely tested and not really impose criteria of having sufficient experience or financial capacity or asking for earnest money deposits and things like that. So these are small supportive steps, but certainly many of these are actually in the startup ecosystem. They are addressing the G2B and G2C rather than B2G. So in most of these cases, the scope of government procurement per se is limited. The demand is come more from the general private market. And as we see that in last few months, there has been a tremendous pickup after the first quarter meltdown due to lockdown. There has been significant pickup in the demand from September, October onward. And we hope that this demand revival will continue, and it will supplement whatever investment push is going in the startup ecosystem. The demand will also come.
Okay. Mr. Bhattacharya, when we talk about ease of doing business for global venture funds, how conducive an environment is India providing for investing in the country? And what is the scope for improvement there as well?
I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The fact that this country has seen remarkable resurgence or growth in the number of startups in a short space of time shows that both on the side of the innovation potential of Indian entrepreneurs, as well as the manner in which the government has provided a helping hand, both have played a role. But as you said, that nothing is perfect. It will be important going forward if you want to sustain this growth of the startup space here. It will be important to create a facilitating system, a system that is facilitated but not interference. There's a subtle difference between interference and intervention and support by creating an environment which is conducive to growth. I think the IT model of growth is probably what is needed for the startup model. And broadly so far, we have seen the same model being used that was used for the IT model. We saw government not playing too much of interfering or interventionist role, but rather playing the role of a support provider in case something goes wrong, some tax policy is creating some problems for the startups. The government should step in quickly and remove those handicaps, like it was done in the case of the angel tax. But if the government thinks that it must come in at every point in time and kind of give them directions, regulation, I would say the spontaneity as well as the innovative spirit of the startup space that we have already seen might be unnecessarily influenced and be given to a different direction. Yes. So far, we have not seen that happening, but it is very important to maintain that creativity, maintain that spontaneity, maintain that enterprise of the startup space, because what we have seen even in a year of the COVID, we have seen this sharp surge taking advantage of the technology, taking advantage of how delivery systems can be improved by use of technology. Look at the way how edtech companies and in what way. I mean, the other day, India's largest edtech company acquired another brick and mortar education company, Akash Institute, because it saw value in it. I think we need to facilitate such natural developments instead of institutions coming in and trying to support them. I think our startup entrepreneurs are one of the best in the world. As I said, that we have occupy the third slot in the country, the overall world. It will be important to create a very good financial support system also, in my view. If you create a proper financial support system, right now there are a large number of startups who are probably looking out for venture capital funds, and we need to create necessary conditions within the country where there are more venture capitalists willing to put their money in the fortunes of these innovative, enterprising young people who can actually not just see their valuation go up, but convert that valuation into wealth, not only for themselves, but for their large number of employees and their stakeholders.
Anurag, a quick suggestion from you on how to boost further the entrepreneurship spirit in the country and give confidence to our young entrepreneurs?
Yes, so the infrastructure support has been already given to us or to all the startups. There are many hackathons. And startups in the nascent stage, they do participate in those, but once they come into advanced stage, they don't even have time to participate in those. So the major like help which could be given to us could be like support in terms of if we want to make government as our client, there must be some fast track committee or something like where we could show them an innovation, and we don't get stuck for around 3 or 4 months or maybe 5 months. And also there's also a notion within a VC ecosystem, even I have faced it. Suppose if you are making government as your client, they don't consider like they don't value that thing. So if you have private players as your client, yes, there would be value in your startup. But if you have government, they won't value you. So that's a notion. Because and the major reason behind it, because suppose if you have a work order from the government, there isn't it isn't very sure that you will receive the whole amount maybe within 6 months or 8 months. So that's the problem. Like if you are a startup, you must be given a certain advantage, like within 1 month or 2 months, there would be a disbursement of payments. And also like government will purchase products from us as well.
Yeah. Okay, and let me now also take one concluding remark from Dr. Pandey. You know, at the roundtable discussion on day one of Prarambh as well, it was mentioned that India has the potential to now become the most innovative nation in the next 10 to 15 years. So in order to reach there, what all must be done?
I think one particular aspect from the policy support level that we have identified is that we have more than 500 active accelerators and incubators which can support, say, more than 5,000 startups annually. But many of these accelerators and incubators themselves require a capacity building support. And as I said earlier, the government by itself may not be providing the business to all the startups, but in terms of a facilitating part, the capacity building of accelerators and incubators and their resource base, like providing co-working spaces and all that, that goes to handhold in the initial phase. There certainly we can focus on and improvise their performance.
All right. So as our panelists suggest that, the growth potential of Indian startups is immense. The Startup Initiative, the Startup India initiative that started 5 years back has made a good beginning. There are certain teething problems, of course, but to see them as important engines of our economic growth, there is a lot of scope of improvement, and valuable suggestions in this regard have been made up by our panelists as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture and sharing your perspective on the subject with us. Pleasure having you on the program. So that's it from us on the program today. In case you missed the television broadcast, you can also watch it on YouTube, and you can send in your feedback and suggestions as well. Thank you very much for your time.